Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today I've got an interesting read titled Ex-Wife, 33 Female. Won't stop trying to contact me and it's effing me up. I want to start this post by saying that I am a regular lurker around these infidelity subs, and just today I made this throwaway account to get some advice. Also, since English is not my first language, there might be grammatical errors, so please excuse those. It has been over 6 months since Discovery Day, 5 months since divorce, and I still need some advice. I do not have enough time to tell my full story, but here is what I can tell you. Married 5 years, had a great sex life. We had made the choice to not have kids until we were both 35. I pretty much caught her having sex with her affair partner in our bedroom. I had been pretty clear about my views on infidelity right from when we started dating and had told her very clearly that cheating was a complete no-no for me. I stayed calm throughout the entire ordeal. I asked her to get dressed. I called up her elder sister who lived in a nearby town and asked her to pick my wife up. I blocked her on all platforms and talked to my lawyer about the divorce proceedings. They drove back to my house the next day, and she immediately threw herself onto me and started crying profusely. She wanted me to give her a chance to explain herself, even though I did not really want to hear any of it, and my answer would still be divorce whether she cheated 100 times or just once. I sat down with her and asked her some questions. My first question was it an emotional affair or a physical one? She seemed to be stupefied for a good 5 or 6 seconds before tears started streaming down her face, and she whined about how I could even think she would have an emotional affair with someone else other than me, and swore it was a purely physical one. My second question was, were you unsatisfied in our marriage in any way? She claimed she wasn't. She was incredibly happy with both our sex life and our financial status. What was the reason then? I don't know, she said, and absolutely broke down. She got on her knees and said she feels disgusted with herself. She said she was going through a lot since she wasn't doing well in her job, and she wanted to validate her own importance in her mind. She often talked to me about her job too. I supported her wholeheartedly, and she was also going to therapy for it. Even though I did not understand her reason, I did not poke much into it. How many times were you physically involved? She told me it was only 3 times of physical contact, and she had apparently never allowed him to kiss her. I don't know if that was supposed to make me feel better about it. With that, I was done. I told her that I wanted a divorce. Surprisingly, she did not say anything, just nodded and went to the guest room and locked herself up with her sister. Unfortunately, though, before I could serve her the divorce papers, our district went into lockdown and travel between districts was prohibited. Thus, in an unfortunate turn of events, it seemed I would need to spend a full week with my wife in the same house, and I could not even file for divorce because the courts were closed. But I was not having that BS. I decided to move out and live in my neighbor's house instead, and that helped somewhat. I would still see her every day. Dark circles, swollen eyes, she looked nothing like before. One day she got too drunk, and I heard her shouting in her room, "I disgust you, don't I? You can't even look at my face." And she repeated that the whole night. Another day, I bumped into her talking to someone on the phone in the footpath in front of our house, and she immediately started freaking out and screamed, "I was not talking to him, I promise. It was just my colleague from work." A while later, she seemed to realize her mistake and walked away without another word. A week later, they moved away, and I moved back into my house. I got done with the divorce about a month later. Bizarrely, she did not demand anything from me in the settlement. 6 months later, she would still text me and call me sometimes. She once drove over 50 miles to see me when I was ill with COVID. I have not been doing very well. I do still love her. The way she was truly remorseful of her mistakes sometimes almost made me feel for her again. But on other times, I just want to cut her off completely and start afresh. I'm not sure if I would be able to love or marry again, but I did get along with a few hookups in the last 2 weeks or so, and to be honest, it does feel better somewhat. I do not know if I can move on if we keep talking. I have told her not to talk to me, but she does not listen. Should I just block her everywhere? I really do not want to hurt her, but she has not left me any option. What should I do? Haha, that part where she said she could not think of cheating on you emotionally and only had a physical affair made me laugh. Gee, thanks for not having emotional affair. Funny she thinks men think like that. You have already done the hard part. If you want nothing to do with her, then tell her not to contact you again and block her. And let's jump to the update. So I did exactly what I had intended to do. I called her up and told her that I wished to go completely no contact for a few months. For a few seconds, I heard nothing on her end, long enough for me to ask her if she even heard me. She said she did hear me and started fumbling for words once again. I explained to her that it was not any fault of her, it was just me that was finding it difficult to move on with my life if we kept talking. She said she understood and promised not to contact me. Before hanging up, she asked me if I was planning on completely cutting her off. I bluntly told her that I was not planning to do so at the moment, but I might change my decision in the future. She told me it was all right, that I deserved to do whatever I needed to get over it, and told me that she would try to find a new job during these months. With that, I bid her farewell and proceeded to block her on all platforms. A few hours later, her sister called me up. She told me I had made a good decision, especially since ex-wife needed this no contact period too. She only did a part-time job, hardly ever went out, and spent the entire day going through old pictures. Thus, at least for the moment, I feel like I have made a good decision. A lot of people have messaged me asking me several questions that were left untouched in the original post. Here, I would like to clear out some. First, how long has the affair been going on? According to her, they first had sex when she went on a work-related trip to another city, which was about 1 month before Discovery Day. Now, she claims there was no sexual tension between them before this trip, but on the other hand, they had been working together in the same office for about 3 months, so I really can't tell if she's lying. Second question, how did she behave in the days before D-Day and immediately after it? In the few weeks before Discovery Day, when her affair was ongoing, I did not really notice anything out of the ordinary. I am generally a very perceptive individual. The usual signs of an affair, such as increased conflict, anger, blaming, trying to keep one's phone close by at all times, I did not notice any of it with her. In fact, she only grew quieter every day. I figured it was because of the problems she was facing at work, and had a good talk with her. She hugged my chest and cried for several minutes, and I did my best in comforting her. We also had a lot of sex that week, as we usually did every week. I feel kind of embarrassed saying this, but we did a role play of her as a criminal and me as a policeman who caught her and then had forceful sex with her. It was her idea. In hindsight, it does make some kind of sense now, though it kinda Fs me up. Apart from that, I noticed nothing out of the ordinary. On the day of discovery, she was dazed throughout the ordeal. It seemed her brain was switched off. She just looked at me with wide eyes, tears streaming down, and just nodded when I told her to wait for her elder sister while I left back to work. Later, sister-in-law later called me up to tell me that my ex-wife was nowhere to be found. I was preparing to go out in search of her when she called again to tell that she found ex-wife walking around in a dazed state around our neighborhood. She was either searching for me or for her affair partner. I don't know which. In her sister's house, she apparently also tried to harm herself physically, but then calmed down and had some rest. And third, is she still talking to her affair partner? This is one point that I failed to mention in my original post. She quit her job immediately after Discovery Day. According to her, she could not bear to see a affair partner there every day. I had anticipated that she would use this opportunity to ask for a heavy stipulation from the divorce, which made it even more bizarre that she didn't. Fourth, was she really talking to her affair partner on the phone when you stumbled upon her on the footpath? Frankly, I don't know, and I haven't asked. And fifth question, how was your relationship after the divorce? We did have a no-contact period of about 1 week after the divorce. Later, she called me up and asked me if I could consider keeping a friendly relationship with her. I saw no harm in it, so I agreed. We agreed that we would not talk about the divorce or our married life. We just asked each other about work and about how we were doing. As for the frequency of contact, I would say minimal. 1 or 2 texts per day, maybe, and sometimes none for days. Sometimes we would talk over call, but not for long periods. We never met physically. She did once drive over when I was ill, but was not allowed to actually meet me physically because I was in the isolation ward. Sixth and last, have you tried therapy? Of course. I have been in therapy since Discovery Day. Ex-wife went to a therapist for the first 2 months after the divorce, but then stopped going for no apparent reason. Some people in the comment section seemed to misunderstand my original post. They kept posting comments asking me to consider reconciliation. I would like to reiterate that my original post was about whether I should block her or not, and not about reconciliation. I made the decision to not reconcile a long time ago, and ex-wife has accepted it. It is not about how much she regrets and mourns over it. I am simply incapable of trusting her again. Once again, a very sincere thanks to everyone who commented. Well done, man. There's no point in staying in contact with a cheater from whom you're already divorced and with whom you have no kids. It looks like she was hoping she could slowly crawl back into your life through friendly contact. Stay strong and focus on your healing. Can't believe how cheaters can throw everything away for some validation. And the next story, titled, Finding out the truth about my wife. We spent 2 years together in college and got married the fall after we graduated. Spent 2 years exploring our relationship and finally got settled down and was ready to raise a family. She got off birth control and her libido took off, but it took 3 years for us to get pregnant. But we got a beautiful girl finally. After a couple of months, my wife got back on birth control and had a hard time with it. Her doctor switched her meds several times, but she had bad side effects with each one. We talked about it and were unsure if we wanted another child, and since it was easier for me to get a vasectomy reversed later if we decided to have more children, I had the operation. That was 3 years ago, and after coming off birth control, my wife has felt better, and SEX has been worry-free since we can no longer get pregnant. We actually have SEX more now than when we were in college. Then 3 weeks ago, my wife was late for her period, which isn't that unusual for her. Then I noticed her breasts were a little tender and she started what seemed like signs of morning sickness. Now I know there have been cases of nature-reversing vasectomies, so I went to the doctor and had my sperm count checked, and the verdict was, I'm still sterile, but I didn't tell my wife. My wife finally went to her doctor and confirmed she was pregnant, and so she had me go to my doctor to get tested. I didn't go right away because I was literally sick from the stress of the situation. I had all sorts of sick scenarios going through my head. In the end, I got retested, and I took my daughter in and had a DNA test done. I got both test results back today and got violently ill after reading them. Yes, I'm sterile, and no, my daughter isn't mine. When my wife got home, I showed her my test, and she denied any wrongdoing and said that there was a problem with the test, and I showed her the test from last week, and she broke down crying. I finally got it out of her who she had slept with, and that it only happened once, and the condom must have failed. I made her tell me the story 3 times, and each time I asked her if that was the whole truth, and if there was anything else that she needed to tell me, because another lie would mean we were through. She said that was the only time and she had never done anything like that before. I told her how much this hurt me and asked her how she could do this to our family and if it was worth it. I asked her if she wanted a divorce and she pleaded with me to forgive her and put this behind us. I said I couldn't raise someone else's child and asked her if she would be willing to terminate the pregnancy in order to stay together. She cried the rest of the night, but when we went to bed, she said she would do whatever it took to save our marriage. I never brought up the DNA test. I will contact a lawyer next week to see what my options are about if I have to pay child support on our first child. If she had come clean about the father of our first child, I could have swallowed my pride and tried to work to forgive her, but she thought she was in the clear and didn't need to confess to anything else. No telling what I'll never know. Lawyer update. My lawyer is awesome. She had me bring in a bunch of paperwork, bank statements, and my medical and DNA results, and had me tell her my story. Her assistant sat in with us and took notes while my lawyer went through my documents. After I finished, she asked a few questions and spelled out my options. I live in an at-fault state, which is good and bad. Good as in it gives us leverage, bad as it takes longer and much more expensive. In the case of the first child, if my wife agrees to sign the papers, my liability for child support is an easy fix. If she doesn't agree, then a court-ordered DNA test and a judgment from the court can remove me without my wife's consent. Either way, I will most likely not have to pay child support. One way is just more expensive than the other. Since my wife has a good job and earns close to what I do, she didn't think the judge would award her any alimony, and all of that plus dividing up property and other things can be negotiated before a judge gets involved. The bad news was due to the holidays they couldn't have the papers ready before Christmas, but definitely would before the end of the year. She advised me to say nothing until she got served. She gave me a list of things to do before and after Christmas before they served my wife. One thing they did point out was since we were actively trying to have a baby, there was a possibility that my wife didn't know that the child wasn't mine. My wife has an appointment with her obstetrician tomorrow. Geez, what a trash. She basically cheated on you the whole time, and without any protection, who knows how many guys she's been with and risked you getting an STI. If you hadn't had a vasectomy, you would have never found out the truth and would be raising someone else's children. You're not the biological father, so you're not responsible for the child. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for leaving. And now to the update. So I met my sister at my house and we started moving my stuff to her house while the divorce goes through, or at least until my soon-to-be ex-wife leaves, and I get possession of the house. We took 4 carloads to her house and came back for the rest. My sister felt it important for her to be there for support and as a witness. I also moved the nanny cam into the living room so it could record everything in the cloud. At about 10:45 a.m., I got a text from the lawyer saying she had been served. I sent her an email saying that I am at the house when she's ready to talk. A couple of minutes later, I got a text from my wife saying, "Why, blah, blah." So I resent the first text and waited for her to get home. She sent several texts and voicemails. They don't mention anything about cheating, just how she thought we were working this out, and she thought we would sit down and have a conversation before proceeding with a divorce. Playing the family card and how this will devastate the child and our families. How she feels betrayed. That was a good one. She was still sharing her location, and it took her 20 minutes before she left work. She then stopped at a nearby Walgreens for a few minutes. The purpose of the stop at Walgreens became clear as a police car pulled in behind her in the driveway. According to the officers, she got the police there because she said she was afraid and that we had guns in the house. I showed the officers my empty gun safe and said that I had removed them to another secure location. We went back to the living room, and I showed my wife the paternity test that I had done that showed her daughter was not mine. Her response was denial and disbelief, which appeared genuine. She broke down and cried for about 10 minutes. I told her this was the final straw and why I wanted the divorce. At about that time, the police officers reminded me to keep it civil and made their exit after I told them I was leaving soon to stay at my sister's house. When I asked who the child's father was, she claimed she didn't know. I asked if there were that many guys she was sleeping with, or did she just not know his name? I asked how many times she had cheated on me between pregnancies, to which she said it was just the two of them. I told her that I had said earlier if she didn't tell the whole truth that I was done. I reminded her I also told her that I wouldn't raise someone else's child, and that she had better figure out who the real father was because I wasn't paying child support for someone else's baby. She wanted to know what we were going to tell our daughter, and I said that was up to her because this was her mess, and I wasn't taking the blame or cleaning it up for her. I drafted a couple of emails last week, one for our friends and family with copies of all the test results and reasons why I was asking for a divorce, the other for my wife, with copies of the same tests, along with what I knew and things that I had told her previously. I had to run it through my lawyer and make a couple of edits before she signed off on it. I sent copies to all our friends and relatives when she pulled into the driveway this afternoon. Most of the feedback has been one-sided and very colorful. In the end, I told her if she had been truthful, we might have been able to work things out. But I couldn't trust a lying serial cheater, and I told her if she had gotten her tubes tied instead of me getting a vasectomy, she might have got away with it. I told her she needed to get a lawyer so we could move forward and start to heal. Edit. We had our second meeting with the lawyers today, and we signed off on almost everything except the house, still waiting for an appraisal to come back and figure out the split. Motions got filed today, and a court-ordered paternity test was scheduled for all three of us. Since soon-to-be ex-wife didn't fight me on everything, we filed a no-fault divorce petition. If everything goes right, I get the house back on February 15th, and the divorce will be final on April 5th. The lawyers did a better job keeping us separated and the conversation between the two of us to a minimum. I was a little worried when she came in, pale and with no energy to speak of. I couldn't tell if it was lack of sleep or maybe over-medicated. She just stared out the windows as the lawyers read everything to us before we signed some of the papers. Walking out felt like I had shed a giant weight from around my neck. HR got me signed up for therapy tomorrow. My boss had put a bottle of champagne on my desk, offered me some time off if I needed it, but I told him I was excited to get back to work. Additionally, someone asked OP in the comments, "What response did your friends and family give?" OP responded with, "So far has been shock and disgust from most. The paternity test is what hits hardest at most of them. A couple of people weren't surprised about the cheating part, even though they never said anything before. Surprising that none of her close girlfriends have jumped to her defense. Father-in-law sent me a sad email trying to take the blame for not raising her right. He wished me well and said he would pray for me. The ex-wife messaged me a couple of times about talking it out. I think she still wants to save this relationship. I haven't responded to any of them, and she stopped trying to reach out a couple of hours ago. OP, I'm proud of you, the way you handled everything perfectly. The cops should have arrested her for making false accusations. This could have gone terribly wrong. She's a pathological liar, and ending the marriage was the right move." Her friend's response seems telling. They likely knew about her cheating, as is often the case. As for her father, he seems like a good man. While many may not agree, I believe DNA tests should be mandatory at birth. You can never be sure. And that concludes today's saga. Viewers, if you made it to the end, then don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you never miss out. Until next time, bye-bye.